Hey there, welcome back to Berkeley Life. I bet you haven't seen something like this on top of a schoolie conversion yet. Today I'm going to show you how I built it. Stay tuned. So, a schoolie conversion is really just a tiny home on wheels, you know? We're going to have 2 adults, 2 kids, and a dog living in 120 square feet living space. So while we were planning our layout and arranging and rearranging everything, we quickly came to realize that we didn't have enough room to fit what we actually needed to fit to live in the bus full time. We're gonna need more space than we had inside with that number of people and dog. So we started thinking outside the box, literally like outside the box of the bus. We're like, how can we get more space out of this bus without having to tow something behind or make some other modular sleeping form deal inside? So while I was working on the build and taking that emergency exit out, I looked up to the massive hole that used to be an emergency exit, and I had an epiphany. What if we had a queen size living space above our head? What if I made a rooftop tent that was accessible from inside our bus that we could heat and we could sleep in and we could have some storage space and put our solar panels on? Like, what if we did that? That would be amazing. So I started doing some research and trying to figure out how I was gonna make this living space work. What I was gonna build this out of. I was hitting a lot of dead ends until it dawned on me when I was getting in my Cherokee, my old Cherokee with a front runner roof rack. I looked at the roof rack and I was like, this is made of extruded aluminum. I put this together with just bolts. So I started looking at extruded aluminum and I found a company called 80/20. When I found that company called 80/20, it's when the Berkeley Pop Top really started to come into fruition. The idea really started to take shape, and I kept doing research on 80/20, and I found a guy who goes by Ripcord who made a rooftop tent for his Tacoma out of 80/20 in a similar way to what I wanted to do. So a lot of the things you're gonna see me do are versions of things he did. The 80/20 won't allow you to order long lengths of extruded aluminum directly from their website. They send you to a distributor that you have to order from, and then that distributor sends you the stuff that they order from 80/20. I went through one of these such distributors, and that was a massive headache. And when they finally got me the quote, it was like double the price if I just bought individual pieces from 80/20. So my limiting factor was getting the long pieces of aluminum delivered to me here. So I got back a hold of 80/20, and they gave me to another company, another distributor, and that distributor was amazing. So if you start to do this project and you have an issue with a distributor, get a hold of 80/20 and get another distributor. The dimensions of both the extrusion and the aluminum composite sheeting that I used for the roof and floor of the loft, along with my specific parts list, will be in my Google Sheets link below. I'll link to all of Ripcord's resources down below as well. That about covers the ordering process, so let's get into the building process. The first steps I personally had to take were only necessary because I didn't have 80/20 mill the anchor fastener holes into the extrusion. You can pay to have them do it, but I had access to a small CNC mill, and along with the ordering issues, I decided to do it myself. First, I measured the fasteners and the extrusion, comparing them to design files on the 80/20 website, and ran a test cut using a piece of HDPE that I had laying around. After testing that it worked, I made a jig for the extrusion to set into for repeated machining accuracy, and then got to cutting the inside ends of the long sections of the extrusion. Once that was done, I test fit the anchors into the holes and then joined the extrusion in the upper and lower frames. Then I had to drill the holes that would allow me to affix the aluminum composite sheeting to the frames. First, I laid both sheets of aluminum composite sheeting on top of one of the plastic sheets that was shipped with the aluminum sheets. This prevented drilling tear out when I drilled through. And then I placed all the sheets on top of the frames and clamped them together, making sure that they were square and flush. Then, keeping the protective film on the sheets and using an adjustable ruler square, I measured from the outside edge of the extrusion to the inside and outside edges of the T-slot on the top of the extrusion, and then marked those lines on the top sheet using a permanent marker. This gave me a visual representation of the width of the slot that the holes were going to be drilled through. Then I measured and marked evenly spaced holes around the sheets. And then I got to drilling. I drilled out the holes through both sheets of aluminum at the same time. The plastic sheet on the bottom prevented tear out when the drill bit came through. As I drilled, I ensured that both sheets were securely clamped together, and I added screws through the holes as I went. This ensured that the holes were all lined up and where they were supposed to go. Once the holes were drilled, I unclamped the sheets and stood them up on their sides. I removed the protective film from all the edges of both sides of the sheets, and then I pre-installed the screws with slot nuts through all the holes. Then I unassembled the frames and pre-installed all the slot nuts and screws into the extrusion that would be needed later to attach the hinges, handles, footman loops, mounting brackets, solar mounting brackets, canvas mounting strips, gas struts, and other accessories. This step requires some forward thinking, but don't worry if you forget something, because they make drop-in versions of the slot nuts that you can add after the fact. Then I laid the sheets with the screws facing down, and I slid the long pieces of extrusion along the slot nuts. Once those were in place, I slid the short lengths of extrusion into the anchor fastener slot nuts, and then along the sheet slot nuts, and then into the far side anchor fasteners. Next, I cut the gasket material and slid it into place along the bottom sections of the frame. I tightened the anchor fasteners and flipped over the frames with the sheets now attached. And then I tightened down the aluminum sheets and arranged the frames on top of each other. Then I drilled out larger holes in the footman loops and the aluminum handles, measured where I wanted them to go, and attached them to the intersections of the frame using those pre-installed slot nuts. Then I applied a bead of caulk where the panels meet the extrusion on the inside edges and in the ends of the short sections of the extrusion, sealing it all up. Then I put the plastic end caps on the ends of the extrusion to add weatherproofing and close it all up. The next step was to cut an access hole that matched up to the emergency exit on the top of the bus. First, I took a large piece of cardboard and put it on top of the bus and traced the hole under the template. Then I cut out the template, measured it, and drew 2 lines halfway through it, creating a crosshair of sorts. Then I measured where the access hole would be on the tent in relation to its mounting point on the bus. And then on the protective film, I drew a crosshair similar but longer than the template. I laid the template on the tent and matched up the crosshair lines. Using those crosshairs as a guide, I traced the template onto the tent and then removed the template. Then I drilled the pilot hole and cut out the access hole with a metal jigsaw blade. Then I vacuumed it all up and we were ready to install it on the roof of our schoolie. First, I measured out where the unistrut would be on the top of the bus, and like our other unistrut installations, I drilled the holes, applied butyl tape, and then bolted the unistrut to the bus through the ribs for maximum strength. I'm using shorter sections of unistrut versus the thicker sections of unistrut as it allows the bottom of the tent to rest on the roof of the bus and gives enough support for the aluminum composite sheets to support the weight of 2 people. Then we put moving blankets on the side of the bus and hoisted it up into place. further support the center of the bottom of the tent, I drilled 3 more holes through the center of the tent and into the center metal support of the roof and applied butyl tape and bolts for added center support. To waterproof the access hole, I applied butyl tape around all the edges and then placed the tent down over the tape and clamped it down. Then we mounted the bottom brackets to the unistrut using unistrut lock nuts and attached hinges to the back of the shell. Both the bottom brackets and the hinges used the pre-installed slot nuts. I added some more sealant to a few areas, but I'll go into more detail on that in a later video on the rooftop tent build. The last steps were hoisting up the roof of the tent and attaching the hinges to the back, and then attaching the gas struts. And that's about it for part 1 of the Berkeley Pop Top build. I know there was a lot of information there, but I appreciate you making it this far. There's going to be a couple more videos about this part of our build as we add the canvas, bedding, storage, lights, and solar to the Berkeley Pop Top, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to catch those updates when they're released. In the meantime, check out some of our other videos that are popping up now. We're super excited to spend our first night in this schoolie and share our adventures with y'all. Until then, I'll see you in the next build episode.
Thank you.